Hello, everyone. I'm Tracy Ariely, end of life doula and founder of Comforting Closure. Welcome to another episode. Today's episode is incredibly personal. We are going to go through the process of creating my advance directive. Let me start off by saying that Oren and I have our advance directives together. This episode intends to share with you the process of creating an advance directive because it is far more than just filling out paperwork. I also want to show that even for people who do this for a living, creating an advance directive is still challenging and emotional. I am honored to have Maureen Kures from A Radiant Mourning with us today. She has spent over 30 years guiding families through these deeply emotional and difficult conversations. I'm especially grateful that my husband, Oren, is here with me today, as this isn't just about me, it's about us, our relationship, and making difficult times as easy as possible for those that we love. Maureen will lead us through this process, starting with choosing a healthcare representative who will make decisions for me if I can't. We'll also be discussing my values, spiritual beliefs, past experiences with death, and a whole host of other things. I know this conversation will bring up some powerful feelings. So if you've ever wondered how to create your advance directive, please join us. Maureen, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Tracy. You know, I'm passionate about this topic. Yeah,
Yes, I do. This is your specialty.
I just love helping people navigate this process. It's so important.
Yeah, it is very important. So, with that, let's begin.
Well, I really want to honor you both for being here because, like you said, it can get emotional. And this is something that we're going to do sitting down in one session, but usually it takes many sessions to get this work done. It's not something that you just sit down and start and finish. It takes a lot of thought and reflection. So I want to start. You two already have your advanced directives completed. So we're just going to review because I believe they should be reviewed annually. I always tell people that I work with, make it your birthday gift to yourself because things change and it's never static. So really having the opportunity to review it is really powerful. But I always start off, even before talking about who your healthcare representative will be. You know, the power of attorney for healthcare is the document. The decision maker, they're called decision makers, proxies, surrogates. There's so many names that you can hear that means that one person that can make decisions on your behalf. But I like to start with really reviewing values because the values that we carry in life that guide us in life will also guide our end of life decision making. And so, really taking the time to think about what values do you hold near and dear in your life. For me, I'm just going to share a few that I'll throw out. Relationships. I'm a very relational person. So you know, I thought family, friends, coworkers, those people mean a lot to me. So I clumped it all into the value of relationships. It's not just family, which is my top of all relationships, but it's okay to really think about, okay, what is that value? The other one is honesty, trustworthiness, integrity. I group those all together under integrity. So what, are some of your values? And both of you can answer, what values are important to you in life?
The relationships also, not only with family and friends, that sense of community is really important to me. Love and really building that relationship with your significant other is my number one. And I think that um, yeah, the integrity, as you have put it, living with integrity is really important because everything else goes, money goes, your home, everything else changes, but that's something that you could really bring with you wherever you go. So that's important to me. I think education is really important. That's a value.
Yeah.
What else, honey?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with what Tracy said so far and add self-improvement, continuously striving to get better, to do better, to be a better person. Empathy, of course, and maintaining your health and hopefully improving your health. Always good things to do. We both love traveling and learning, which is a part of self-improvement. I think it makes you a global citizen versus just thinking locally. And ideally, I'd like to leave the place better than what I received it.
Yeah. Oh,
See, he's such a better person than I am. He really is. Also, the thing that I value in another person is I love a sense of humor because I love to laugh. Kindness is also top of my list. So I think that being kind to people is important.
And animals.
And of course.
kind to people and animals, or animals are important. I think both.
Uh,
So I love that you said humor, because as we think of our end of life planning and getting these advanced directives done, it doesn't have to be a solemn affair. I love humor at the end of life. It keeps things real. And it's okay to laugh, it's okay to joke. So thank you for saying humor, because that is one of my values. Uh, so how do you
Yeah, I do have to.
what's that?
I do have to say the first time that we did this was without humor. So hopefully we could. It was really, really difficult
Yeah,
that first time, and we just did it together. We didn't have anyone else, but being like doing what I knew and have been trained to do. That's kind of how we talked through it, and was really
it
difficult.
is difficult. And um, I acknowledge that. And when I found out that it was okay to express humor and laughter at end of life, I was working as an oncology nurse. And I worked with some really fun, funny nurses. And the patients would say, "We wait for your team," because we had an A team and B team, "to be on staff or be on, because you keep life real." And humor is a way to keep life real instead of somber. And it's going to be sad at end of life and all of that. And but it's joy and grief go hand in hand, is what I've learned through my nursing career. So, how do you guys think your values today are being reflected in your daily life?
I would say just how we live life every day. We always are striving to become better. We read a bunch. We like to go out and learn. We'll go to museums. We believe in volunteering and um, being as kind as possible to the people around us in even when we have the opportunity. I mean, it's just part of who we are. Also, humor. He does make me laugh.
I like to tell her dad jokes since her dad is not here. He's in Chicago. I'm kind of the substitute, so I have tons of dad jokes, and I'm not a father myself, so I get to use that at least on Tracy.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're funny. Other
Yeah,
times,
Dad
mostly
jokes
they're
can
not.
be
Mostly they're dad
Yeah,
jokes.
jokes can be pretty funny. My son worked at a blood bank, and he'd always put up a dad joke every day. And he's been gone for almost 4 years, but I still, when I go up to donate blood, they're like, "We carried on Alex's dad joke tradition." So I love that you say dad jokes. So one of the things I'm hearing is education is really important to you, and educating yourself. So is it fair to say that you guys, if you are diagnosed with either a serious illness, a chronic illness, a life-limiting illness, you would want to educate yourself about
oh yeah.
what's going on? I think that's so important, that as we're diagnosed with different conditions, that we really understand what they're about and the risks of the diagnosis, what treatment plans, what would be the benefits and risk of treatment. So I love that education is so important to you. So how do you see these values influencing your goals of care as you might get one of those diagnoses of either serious, chronic, or life-limiting illness?
You just talked about educating. I believe that educating ourselves, and in the past we have had health issues, serious health issues, and we've always strived to educate ourselves so that we could advocate for ourselves, so that we could, the medical team only knows a person so well. Um, but in our medical system, each person has to be their own advocate because no one else will. So to be able to advocate for ourselves, to make good decisions based on our beliefs is really important. So I could see that if we come down with other serious illnesses, we do the same. If it's a life-ending illness, a life-shortening illness, um, I can see that not only would we want to educate ourselves so that we understand what's coming down the road, and so we could mitigate as much as we possibly can to make our lives, the quality of life, as good as possible. Uh, but we'd also use that to make decisions about how we live
Mhm.
the remainder of our lives, what we really want to do. Because, of course, saying that you have 20 years left in your life is a lot different than saying you have 2 years left or a year left of your life, and the things that you would focus on or we'd focus on would be different. What do you think?
I'm a bit of an empiricist. I like to know the facts going into any decision. The more information I have, the better, to an extent. I mean, you can't overload yourself with information, and then it's a crisis of analysis that you can get into. So whenever something comes up, I try to research it as best I can, knowing that I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor. But if I can get a lay understanding, then that helps me make a decision in the future.
And it also will help set the guidelines for the questions you ask your healthcare provider. So I really appreciate that you two are so open to understanding. And Tracy, you said that no one understands um, like the person going through it. So Tracy, you can't truly understand what Oren's going through, and Oren, you truly can't understand what Tracy's going to. You can empathize, but it's really we are the ones that understand our bodies, our conditions, and even the healthcare providers. So the more we can educate and advocate, that's so good. Um, I'm going to jump into death experiences. I am a huge fan of Barbara Carnes. She's like the guru of everything hospice. And I heard her say once that really to do this work and to think about our own end of life planning, we have to look at the experiences with death that we've had and how they influence us. So, is it okay if I ask you a few questions? Um, so, either one of you, what was the first death experience that you remember?
So my first experience with death that impacted me was with our family pets because we had quite a few dogs growing up. My mother loves dogs, so the loss of a dog that you kind of grew up with, at least in your formative years, into your teen years, it hits you hard, especially if it's, he is a member of the family, he or she. They are as much a family member as your brother, sister, uncle, niece, and nephew. Actually, probably even more so than the relatives you don't see on a daily basis. So that was tough.
How old were you when this happened?
The first
First one.
pet that I remember that we had that passed away was let's see, it was before I moved to Plainview, so 1979. I was probably 8 or 9 years old.
Yeah. Do you remember the feelings you had?
In general, I mean, I can't recall the specific feeling from that long ago, but it would probably be pretty much the same as any loss we've experienced recently. It's kind of heartbreaking that you think of all the moments you shared up until then, and the fact that you'll never get to experience similar moments or make new memories with them. So you lament not only the loss of having them around, but any future experiences you can have.
Thank you. Yeah. What's the most recent death you've experienced? Is it also a pet?
No, a friend of mine and a work colleague passed away only about 4 weeks
Oh,
ago,
wow. Really recent.
and it was somewhat unexpected and somewhat sudden. I know he was going in for a procedure at the hospital, and yes, he was a bit older. He's about my father's age, so he's in his 70s. But I had worked with him numerous times over 15 years, the past 15 years, and spoken with him probably once or twice a week. It may be even more than I speak with my parents. So I speak with once a week at least, but we would have regular conversations. He was here for lunches. We would see each other on video shoots. So he was the most recent loss I experienced.
Yeah. Was it one of the most difficult that you've experienced?
I would. It was unexpected. It's difficult in the sense that I was hoping to see him again. We had plans, and it was very sudden. And I didn't get to kind of even see him when he was in the hospital. He was convalescing after a surgery, and because of complications, he passed away within about a month. So I still had the feelings that I was going to go see him in the hospital, and ideally outside the hospital as well. If he recovered, when he recovered, was my goal.
I'm going to ask one more question about grief. And we all go through grief. And I love that you have shared pet grief because I am a pet lover and agree so much. I still grieve pets from my childhood, I remember each one. But how do you process your grief, Oren?
Probably staying busy.
Mhm.
I don't try to dwell on it, uh, but keeping active, keeping busy allows me to focus on other things and not harp on it.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. I don't know, Tracy, if you want to go through this.
Yes, yes, please.
So,
Um, so I have a couple death experience, but first one was a pet also, or my pet growing up, Cinder. She was a standard sized poodle. Um, and I reacted, I was 16, but we had her since I was born. I mean, she was, my mate growing up, right? And to me, it was just natural that she was ready to go. I mean, I remember my father wrapping her up in a blanket to take her to the vet. And my father was was upset. But I just pet her and I kissed her goodbye. And it was just natural. I just knew that it was time. But I was sad, of course. But I didn't cry because I knew that that's just the way it was supposed to go. Um, and then, of course, my grandfather passing away, but they lived in Arizona, but I miss them. But the real first human experience I had was I had a friend that I used to figure skate with, and she contracted AIDS.
mhm,
And that was the first real experience I got seeing someone die, her and her husband, and seeing them get sick. And then her husband passed away, and then she passed away. And I became really close to her after her husband passed away. But yeah, seeing that, and that had a deep effect on me because um, it was sad because I saw her almost daily. Um, but I also had some anger because I saw how she was not well, how she was treated. She wasn't treated very well by the medical community because it was the late 1990s or no,
80s.
early 1990s. Yeah, early 1990s. So there was that. Um, and then there was my cousin Heather, who I've talked about a lot on this program, but she died of suicide when she was young, 24, and that had a um, big effect because I grew up with her.
How do you think these death experiences impact how you or influence how you think about your own end of life planning?
Well, with Colleen, my friend who died of AIDS, again, it's that I have to take and educate myself. because, and being an advocate for myself because no one else, and to educate Oren, no one else is going to do that. The medical community won't. And so a healthy, I won't say distrust because I love, I feel very fortunate to be here in this day and age. But also with Heather, that's an interesting question. How did that influence how I see my death? I don't think that I could process how Heather, her death by suicide, how that will play into my death. I can't process it.
Does it
If that makes sense.
influence how you might plan with your end of life planning, the advance directives and choices you might make as you age? Right now, yes, we've all had some medical illnesses, but we're relatively healthy. But will it influence you at all as you might get that chronic illness diagnosis or a life-limiting illness diagnosis?
I think I could liken it to when Heather passed away, believe it or not, like 3 weeks after she passed away, I saw the notice for the AIDS ride. And so I signed up for it, but doing that physical work really helped me grieve. It really helped me grieve. So I think using that experience, and even with the illnesses that I've had, I've always done something physical, I would say, to help me. So I could see as I age still wanting to be as active as possible because that really helps me, I guess, mentally
Mhm.
experience things and go through things.
Great.
Does that make sense?
Yes,
Is
it
that
does. It
okay?
does. That'll really influence, I think, what would be acceptable and not acceptable for you as you age. So, as you approach end of life. So, thank you both for working through that little exercise.
Don't you mean all three of us?
All three of you.
Third party
Yes.
here.
I usually
The
have my
noisemaker.
dog up here with me, but he is at dog school today. One day a week, he gets to go
Oh,
with his dog friends.
Ah,
for those that are listening to this versus watching it, we are now holding one of our cats.
yeah, and you'll hear some purring most likely. So this is
Okay.
his happy place right now.
Oh, I love it. I'm a cat lover too. I'm just an animal lover. That's why we have all different kinds of things in our house. Okay, are you ready to start talking about that healthcare, making the decision of who would speak on your behalf if you become unable to do so?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you guys have your advance directives done.
Yes.
So, do you have a primary? Who You may both say who your primary decision makers are.
We're
Yeah,
we're
we're
we're our
each other's primary.
primaries.
Okay. And have you thought about who would be the secondary and the importance of having a primary decision maker or surrogate or proxy? Um, I'm going to use the term decision maker in this, but they all mean the same thing. The primary is the first person. I want to just stress it's not a good idea, and you two don't have this, but to ever have co decision makers because no matter how much you think they might agree, at times of emotional duress, which when someone has to step into this role, it is emotional. No matter how much you prepare, it's still going to be emotional. So there can end up being unforeseen disagreement. And that's why I love that you each have your primary. Do you have a secondary person named?
It's very interesting. That question is very interesting because most of the people that I'm close with do not live in the area. Be it that my family doesn't live in this area and that my good friends don't live in the area. So that's a very difficult question because I know that I need a person here in
It's
the
always
air.
best practice to have it there, and we do live in a virtual world now.
Yeah, so it's really, but I know that if I am in an ICU and that they're not going to be calling my brother on the phone to find out information, to find out my wants. That person is going to need to be here.
Yes, it is always best to have someone local. The importance of having a secondary person named is the what if you are in an accident. You 2 are together, you're each other's decision maker, you're in an accident, and neither of you can make your own decisions. It would need to go to the secondary decision maker, and sometimes people have an alternate, after that too, because the person might not be able to take on the role at that time. It might be too emotional. One of the things that I appreciate about the 2 of you is that you've had really serious conversations about this, and that's what needs to be done with anyone that steps into this role. They have to be open to talking about, your wishes and open to sharing, and on an ongoing basis because they do change, but, um, so your primary, you're each other's, you're here in the area.
The Oren has a secondary that's in the area. I was using my brother, so I have to really think about who that person would be, and have a discussion because I have friends here that are close. I just don't think that they would be able to make decisions and not get emotional. I mean, sometimes I'll talk to some of my friends and they won't even be able to talk about death. They won't. So, this it's a difficult decision. Not only do I have to be close to that person, but they have to be able to take the emotion out of it and be willing to hasten my death if needed.
I think that's really important to know. You have to take the emotion out of it. And I'll just share, I think I've shared this with you before, but I was the decision maker for my uncle. My cousin is still alive and well and fully cognizant, able to make decisions, but he chose me. And it was very emotional for me, and he had given me the gift of knowing. So, I would encourage you to really think. I think it's fine that you have your brother right now. Um, Hospitals, as long as they have the advanced directives, most of the time, I can't say all of the time, but they will reach out. Um, so as long as your brother is willing to have that role and willing to talk to you and be open. I was up in Seattle, my uncle was in Palm Desert, so we did it all over the phone. Not ideal. It's always best, to be present. He had moved from Seattle down to Palm Desert, about 3 years before he died, and, I was encouraging him to find someone else. "Nope, I want you." So, and it might be someone that you're acquainted with and might not know very well. I know you work with, people in the death care industry, end of life care industry. Maybe it's someone that you meet and you can ask them if they would be willing as you get to know them. So I would encourage you to keep an open mind about who that local person might become. And the one thing I do love about advanced directives is that we can change this anytime we want. And that's why I encourage reviewing them. So right now, it sounds like your brother is the best option at this time.
But I have some other, because you said that. I think I know many death doulas in the area that I've go out with and talk with. So that would be kind of an ideal, because
Yes.
they understand. They really
Yes.
they
And
get
so
it.
I think sometimes we think that it has to be someone close to us or that has known us for a long period of time. And I think that someone that's willing to listen willing to review your wishes with you. They don't even have to agree with them. They just have to be willing to honor them.
Great.
Does that
Thank
help?
you. Yeah, that does. Thank you.
Yeah. And as always, ask, ask them.
Yes, definitely.
I know. I was put down once as a healthcare surrogate with no knowledge of it until it had to be enacted, and I had never spoken to this person about end of life wishes. So when you're doing this work, yeah, ask, ask, ask. So,
Thank you.
do you have any other questions about choosing that person or the people?
Do you, honey?
Is it better, in a general sense, to have a non-family member as an alternate?
It just depends on their willingness to step in. I often say that sometimes your spouse might not be the best, depending on how emotional they might feel. Everyone tends to put their spouse. I have my spouse, so but really to think. So there's no right or wrong on who you choose. It's just if they're willing to do it and they feel that they can take on that responsibility because it is a commitment. It's not something to take lightly. And I encourage people to, when they ask someone, to give them time to think about it because we all want to make that knee jerk, oh, sure, I'll do it for you. But to ask them to really take a little time and reflect on if they can step into this role for you emotionally and let them come back to you then after a moment of reflection, not just that knee jerk, yes, I'll do it for you because I love you or you're my friend. Do they really have the capacity to step into this role?
Yeah, that was going to be one of my follow-up questions is there some sort of litmus test for choosing a person, not just, hey, I've got a lot of friends and, I can ask any one of them. I happen to be close to this friend at this moment. Should I choose them? Should it be someone that's similar enough to me or the person that knows me better
I
overall?
think I think what it comes down to, it's someone that you can trust to do what you request of them, someone that you trust to honor your wishes, and someone that you trust to make that difficult decision because things come up that you might never have expected. To make that difficult decision, even if you've never talked about it, that they would do it with your best interest at heart based on the conversations you have. So I think it comes down to who do you trust. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
I'm good.
Well, are you guys ready to jump in to the making decisions? I know you guys are in California, so I'm going to be going along with the California Advance Directive. And one thing that not all states allow when a advance directive is completed or that healthcare decision maker is chosen, uh, you, most often it is when the person becomes unable to make their own medical decisions. But it's really interesting. There's a few states that I found. I'm not really educated on every state that I remember, but that in California you can have them take over as soon as the document's signed. That doesn't mean you give up your decision making, but if you want them to make the decision for you, it is allowed. As I was reading through this, I thought, oh, that's interesting. So, have you thought about when you would want the decision maker to take effect, or when you would want them to be able to make decisions on your behalf? Would it be when you did not have the mental capacity to do it yourself? Okay. So make sure when you're filling out this California directive, I know you already have it done, but when you're reviewing it, you really think, is that how I still want it? And read that portion of it. So one of the things I want to review with you is all of the medical terms that you understand. Not all, but I think that sometimes we need to understand medical terminology, like life support. Most people think that it's the ventilator and the breathing tube. So that is when you hear of someone being taken off life support. That's usually what it is. Life support can also be hydration, tube feeding, dialysis. There's so many different forms of life support that means that it will prolong your life. Artificial nutrition or tube feedings is a big one. As long as you're getting sustenance, your body will have a harder time shutting down. So, do you have any questions about these end of life support measures?
The tube feeding, what does that exactly mean?
Well, there's different ways to do it. Tube feeding, it means that a nutritional supplement is made for you, and it is either administered through a surgically implanted gastric tube straight into your stomach, or it means that a nasogastric tube has been put down your nose and into your stomach, and then the nutrition is administered that way. IV hydration is also a form of life support because if we have IV hydration, it will keep us alive longer than if we do not, if our body is truly shutting down.
Now, without a medical advocate, how long would a hospital keep you on a feeding tube or life support if nobody else intervened? I know it's not indefinite.
No, it's not. Well, it depends. It depends if there's no one to intervene. If you haven't chosen your healthcare surrogate, it will automatically go to next of kin, or they will petition for guardianship, and then someone will make that decision. But as long as there is either a next of kin or you've been assigned a guardian, which can that's a long process at times, the legal process, you will be kept alive during that time. So it's hard to say. It's if the next of kin that you've never spoken with about any of this wants to keep you alive because they just can't make that decision and let you go, you will be kept alive um, as until that decision's made, or your heart just stops. And I've seen all those scenarios.
And I hate to bring this up, insurance, payment. Yeah, those are things that weigh into this also, at least for me, because if I'm not going to, well, it depends where I am on in my life and there's a very different scenario of, okay, I'm coming out of surgery. I have to, for a couple weeks be put on something versus I've gotten into a serious accident and my body's shutting down, or I'm 90 years old, I'm 100 years old, I'm going for that centurion, that goal.
Right.
Um, but there's different, very different than, I'm at that age and my body's just shutting down. It's time. So it depends on the scenario.
I'll give you a good scenario. Colon cancer. They might have to resect your colon. And I do know a family member that was had a gastric tube implanted, and for 4 months they were on tube feedings. That was about 15 years ago, and they're still doing well. They are living life, but they did remove that. So they knew it was for a finite period of time. And I think sometimes when you look, and that's why to review annually, or when you get a diagnosis of a chronic or a life-limiting illness, what's acceptable to you today. Like, sure, I would want a feeding tube or gastric tube and to have artificial nutrition if it meant that I would live a good life. So if that's how you feel now, but as you age and other diagnoses come into play, what quality of life would I have? I think that gets into asking yourselves the question about what is living well? and what's a good day. So, what is a good day for you? Like if you had if you are seriously ill, what would be a good day for you? If it's hard to imagine when we're not seriously ill, but I think that the more we can think about living well and what's a good day, it'll help us make some of these decisions. And these are the questions you ask yourself every time you review your advanced directives. Is this still the same? Would I still be living well with the decisions I've made in this advanced directive? Would I still be able to have good days?
Well, we're all out of time for today's episode, but we will be back again next week to finish the discussion. Maureen, thank you so much for being on the show today and leading us in this important conversation. I'm very grateful for your guidance. Before we wrap up, could you tell our listeners how they can learn more about you and your work?
Yes, thanks for asking and thanks for having me. They can find me at Maureenkures.com is my email, and radiantmourning.com is my website. And I'm also part of Gentle Passage Doula Collective.com. We educate doulas. We do doula training, end of life doula training, and educate on end of life issues.
Great. And we'll have all of that information in the description. Folks, we've covered one part of the conversation today, but there is more to explore, and I invite you to join us next week as we continue this discussion. Together, we'll talk about the next steps of creating my advanced directive and unpack more of these deeply personal decisions. If you're hesitant to start planning, remember that these conversations are a way of caring for yourself and your loved ones. Even if it's just beginning to think about what matters most to you, taking the first step is an act of love. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, please comment below or contact me directly. If you've found this conversation to be helpful, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. This is Tracy Ariely from Comforting Closure, wishing you peace and comfort in your journey. Until next time, take care.